Okay, Baruch Hashem, I found that now. Okay, let's go back. So Rav Chanina comes to the boondocks. Rav Chanina comes to the boondocks, and he's asked the stira, right? What exactly is the height in the Kodesh Kodashim? One place it says 30, one place it says 20, and we're told Rav Chanina answered them that the second one that said 20 is considering from the kruvim and going up, the kruvim and going up, and that's a total lot of 20. So 20 and 10 was 30. My kamash malon. Tzadik Teslam and Aleph, Hakamash Malon. Limata below the 10 below, Kilamaila is like the 20 above. Malemaila, just like the 20 above, Ein Mishamish Klum. There was nothing there. It was empty. Aflamata Ein Mishamish Klum. So too, the space below was not Mishamish anything. Messiah Levi, Dam Rab Levi, Vitam Rab Yochanan, Davazeh Messiris Biadenu. This is a Messiah we have. May Avosenu, that Makam Arin Ukruvim, the Makam of the Arin and the Kruvim of Shlomo, right? Eina min Amida, they're not considered what? Part of the Mida. They're not part of the Mida. Meaning, fellas, if you have the Arin is 2.5, right? So if you have a space of 20 and you're going to go ahead on each side, you're going to have what? 2.5 and 7. You're going to have 17.5. It's going to the 2.5 is going to diminish from what? From the 20. You should have what? 17.5. If you'd measure from one side of the Aron, it would be 10. If you measure from the other side of the Aron, it would be 10. It did not take up any space. The Aron did not take up any space. And this is, I think I have a very nice pshat I'd like to share with you. Why is this so? So there's a Meshech Chochma in Parshas Vayera. It says the following. It says, Vayehi ben Soaron, Vayoma Moshe, Kuma Hashem. When the Aron got up and to move, what did Moshe say? Hashem, go. Kuma, get up. Says the Meshech Chochma, Hashem lives by the Aron. Hashem lives by the Aron. Therefore, Moshe said, the Aron's traveling, Kuma Hashem, get up. One of the things we believe is that Hashem is incorporeal. He's without a body. So Memela, if Hashem lives in a house, how can the house have any body, right? So I think it's a very nice pshat. It doesn't take up any room because Hashem has no room. He's not there. And Mela would make a lot of sense. Derech pshat that the Aron didn't take up any room. You find this concept. If I just digress a little bit, there's one of the things that we put in the Aron was the Tzintzenes Haman. They put in the Tzintzenes Haman, the Shem and Amishra, and the Argus from the Pelishtim. That was by the Aron. It was Nignas V'Yeshio. One of the questions I heard was, how could they go ahead and put the Tzintzenes Haman? You're not allowed to leave the man overnight. You're not allowed to leave the man overnight, right? So the Rugged Shavagain answers beautifully. He says, you know why? In the Beis HaMikdash, there's no teva. The Aron didn't take up any room, and there's no time in the Beis HaMikdash either. There's no time, right? There's no time. So Memela, it won't be subject to time, so it would not be a problem. I thought it was a great teretz until I spoke to Levi Gelfish. So Levi said, and what about Neusser? Okay, if there's no time in the Beis HaMikdash, what about Neusser? Your carbon, you leave it out overnight. It's overtime, it's gone. So I said, I tied it, well, maybe it's in the Kodesh Kodashim. The concept's in the Kodesh Kodashim. And then I was thinking, maybe not. Because I was thinking, when you were oimdim tzfufim, mishtachvim, right? We said we were standing, mamish tzfufim, like floating together. And then you would bow down. It's also a nest. That all of a sudden, in other words, even the physicality was not limited. It wasn't limited in the Beis HaMikdash, right? So, but that's in the Heichel. That's not in Kodesh Kodashim. So I threw that out to him, and he said something very interesting about the mun. I think this is Emes Dik Pshat. He says it's not a kash in the first place. He said by the mun, it's not a kash in the first place. What's the reason the mun left every single day? Bitachon, right? That every day you're gonna have to be samech and b'ayim shalom. If it lasted, what would people do? They would store it, and they would have, like we all do, right? We'd put away a little nest egg. You put away a little mun egg, right? You'd have a little something stowed away, right? So what happened? What did Hashem do? Hashem went ahead and he took it away every single morning. What was the purpose of the Tzintzenes Haman? Is to still be talking like Kadosh Baruch Hu, that it's there. It didn't belong to anybody. It didn't belong to anybody. It was an extra mud. It wasn't I'm like a goyless. It didn't belong to anybody. The whole reason was to go ahead. So Memela, for that month to stay was the whole purpose of the month. to teach that what? All the years in the midbar, there was be talking like Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's what Rabbi said. I think it's a beautiful teretz. Beautiful teretz to the kasha. It's not even a kasha. It's it up. It's a beautiful teretz. So the Rogatchover had a very charifistic pshat. Charifistic pshat about the month. The Levi's pshat derech teva, I think, is a very, very beautiful pshat. That again, in this case, there would not be a problem whatsoever, simply because it instills be talking like Kadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, where it's up to Tzadik Tes Amid Aleph, Tzadik Tes Amid Aleph. Now, ukruvim einoi min amida. Now, Tanya nami hachi Aron Shas Moshe yesh la revach esa amos l'chol ruach v'ruach. The Aron that Moshe made on each side of it was 10, so it didn't take up any room. The 2.5 was not there. Amar Rav Noyam Shmuel kruvim b'nes hein oimdim. Kruvim, guys, look at Rashbam. Kruvim de Shlomo. The kruvim of Shlomo b'nes hay oimdim gufan. Right, Shenemar. Now, guys, it's gonna say here's gonna be the problem. How big is the Kodesh Kodashim? 20. Good, 20. The wings of the kruvim that Shlomo made were 10. How many kruvim were there? 2, and they touched the walls of the Kodesh Kodashim. They touched the walls of Kodesh Kodashim. So what's the nest? That the body of the kruvim were not part of the cheshbon. Similar to the aron, if you measure on both sides, here the kruvim's body, because again, if the wingspan is 10, that's 20, and they're touching the walls, what about taking into account the body of the kruv itself? And the Gemara is going to slug this up in like 5 or 6 ways. Right, yeah. And that's why you have this picture over here, like to make you nervous. Anyway, anytime the Gemara gives you pictures, you get nervous. Says the Gemara. So kruvim menes, how do you figure it out? Shneimar, the chamesh amos. Just make sure I read the psukim correctly. It says the chamesh amos kanafa kruva echos. 5 amos was one wing of the kruv. The chamesh amos kanafa kruva shein is the second one. The esa amos miktsois kanafav vakitsois kanafav. There was 10 from one end to the other. And gufaya hechi kaimi. So if you had 2 of them, and the wingspan was 10 is 20, how is it possible that what? Where's the body? Elishmami, no, what do you hear from here? The next one, that what? They were a nest from the dimensions. That they did not go ahead and diminish from the dimensions of the kruvim. Okay. Maskevla Abaya, the Dilma Bolton Kirtan Goylam Havikaimi. Now, if you put the wings on the back, maybe you put the wings on the back. So in other words, the Havimim of the Gemara was the wings were like your hands of a person. You have your body, and the hands are on the side of the body. So you have to take into account that amount. What happens if the wings were on the back, like a chicken, right? So therefore, maybe you are taking into account the body, right? But the wings were on top of the body, right? So maybe that's one kasha. And again, we're going to have multiple kashas to slug up the fact that the kruv was a nest. Maybe you're assuming that they were like this. Maybe they were like this. You know, they were like this. They were one on top of the other like this, and therefore the body's taken into account, and therefore it did reach the walls with the bodies taken into account. Why do you assume that it was the length going parallel to the walls? Maybe it was going at an angle, and an angle is of a square is 1.4, right? Right, 1.25, right? Maskul Rav Huna Braid Yeshua, Vidilma Besa me il oy ravach. Maybe it got bigger as you went up. So in other words, the stones were thicker on the bottom, but it got wider as you went up, and therefore what? You are taking into account the body because the walls were not. It wasn't 20, but by there was a larger distance. Maskul Rav Papa Vidilma Mechiv Havi Kaifi Yodayu. Maybe the wings of the kruvim were bent like this, guys. How do you assume that they were straight? Maybe they were bent a little bit, and that would take into account the body. And finally, Maskul Ravashi, maybe like this. Maybe they were holding like this. So therefore, you have no raya that it was a nest. You have no raya that it was a nest. Now, Ketzad heim oimdim. How did the Kruvim stand? How are they situated? Now, again, we're speaking about the Kruvim of Shlomo, and the Gemara is going to bring from the Kruvim of the Orin. And so the Rashbam deals with that, fellas. The Rashbam deals with that, and he says that it makes sense to say that they will be the same. If you look at the first, the second, underneath the picture, guys, underneath the picture, Hakaksiv U'Pneim Labayis, V'Loishna Kruvim Shel Kapairis. No difference between the Kruvim that were on top of the Orin, V'Loishna Shel Gabi Karka, nor the ones of Shlomo that were on the ground. Ruhuyin Hein Liases being in Echad, they're right to be the same way. So in other words, I'm preempting you the kasha. They're going to ask a question: which way are they facing? Are they facing each other or facing towards the bias? One's going to be in Shmos and one's going to be in Divrei Yomim. So l'chayra, what's the kasha, right? One's speaking about Shlomo's Kruvim, and the other one's speaking about what? About the Moshe's Kruvim. So the Rashbam is telling you it would make sense that Shlomo made Kruvim, he would make it similar to Moshe, right? He would make it similar to Moshe, okay? So what's the kasha? Ketzad haya oimdim. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar Chadama once says, we don't know who said it, but Pneim ish el achiv. They were facing each other. The Chad Amar Pneim labayis, and one says what? The Pneim were labayis. Pneim ish el achiv. The ones who said that they were facing each other, it says they're facing the house. So like kasha, Bisman Yisrael when Bnei Yisrael do the Ratzon HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then that's when they face each other. And Khan, when are they facing the face of the house? Bisman Shein Yisrael Ratzon Shal Makom. They're not doing the Ratzon of the Makom. Okay, so now this is really there's two things about the Churban. There's they couldn't have seen the Aron. According to the Aron wasn't there. Churban Bayis Sheni, there was never an Aron. Right now, I think if I remember correctly, it's in Yuma. They scraped. They had on the walls. They had images of the Kruvim, and those images they were hugging each other, and they scraped them off, and they were saying, "Take a look, take a look." But they were hugging each other. This was Mana Churban, right? This is. But the second bias, I remember the shot was they scraped it off the wall. In the first bias, there's a chalukei deis. Was the Aron hidden by Yeshayahu, or was it Nigdal Bavel? Like the day that was hidden by Yeshayahu, they couldn't have seen it. Right. He hid it when the Chaldeans, when the Babylonians came in, it wasn't gone. When the Romans came in, certainly it was never there in the second bias at all. When the Romans came in, okay. But again, when you do the Ratzon HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they're facing each other. I mean, don't do the Ratzon HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they're facing away. That would go ahead and answer it. Ulaman da Amar Upneim Labayis Haksiv Upneim Ish Alachiv. Conversely, what does he do with it? It says they inclined to each other. In other words, they were facing the bias, but their head was turned. In other words, let's say this is the bias, so they would turn. Their head was turned to each other. Their bodies weren't, but their heads were turned to each other. Right. The Tanya, Unclus Hager Oimer, Akruvim Maiset Satsu Oimhein, and Unclus was in the time of the second bias, guys. Yeah. Unclus was the nephew of Titus, right? So the Unclus Hager Omer Akruvim Maiset Satsu Oimhein, they were Maisa, they were childlike, they looked like children. Umtsudadim Pneihem, Ketalmid and Niftam Rabbi, and the faces were turned like the Talmud leaving his Rebbe, where he doesn't go ahead and turn totally away. Okay, so that's a nice digression. Finish. Section of digressions. Okay, says the Mishnah. Mi sheyesh le bor lifnim mi beiso shel chaveroi. Someone has a bar in his friend's property. Now, how do you end with such a mitzvah? Says the Rashbam, 4 lines from the bottom. Ayidei chaluka. Maybe they divided it up a Yerusha, so you ended up. The guy got the house and you got the pit with water. Ayshalachim ibalabayis. Right? Or you bought the rights, you bought the pit, and you even bought what? A derech to get to it. Okay? So that's the way the Metzias would be, where you could have a bar inside a person's house. Okay? Nichnas b'shosh derech b'nei adam nichnasim. You can only go in the normal time. V'yoytze b'shosh derech b'nei adam yoytzim. In other words, 9 to 5, right? You know, whatever the times were, you can only keep normal hours. You can't go ahead and bring your animal into the house to drink from the bar. El mamala, you fill it up. Umashkem and bechutz, and you go ahead and give it to drink outside. Zel oislei pesachas, v'zel oislei pesachas, and each one would make a lock. Each one would make a lock, and we're told by if you look at the Rashbam, zel oislei pesachas, shlei yikna balabayis mimei habar. So the owner of the bar would have a lock that no one should steal his water. Ubalabayis oislei pesachas acheres bois pesach atzmai apsuach lebar, and the balabas of the house will make a pesachas that there. That he shouldn't be able to draw water without him being around. And the only reason he would what, he'll know that you go to the bank, to the safety deposit box, right? You need 2 keys, right? You need, so this, to go ahead and draw water, you're going to need 2 keys. He's not coming in. He knows that he won't be able to get there unless the balabas is there. Now, why did they do this? Continues the Rashbam. Chashad, that this guy shouldn't come in with the woman was there in the house, right? So he wouldn't come in when the woman's there in the house alone. So in Mela, he knew he'd only come when the balabas is there because he won't be able to get the water because the guy's got another set of keys. Okay, that's the Pesachas. Pesachas lehecha. Who does the Pesachas belong to? You know the answer already. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan Shneim lebar. They're both to the bar. In other words, it's not speaking the balabayas to his house. We're not worried about that. It's belonging to the bar. Bishleim balabar boy lishlam murei maya debayra. Bishleim, the owner of the bar, he has a key because he has to watch his water. El balabayas lomali, but the balabayas, what is what? Why does the balabayas? Why does he need the owner of the house? So Rabbi says, I just told you mishum chashad ishtoi. Because of the chashad what of his wife, that should have it be a yichud between, the person coming in the house and his wife. Okay, another mishnah with similar connotations. Misha yeshle gina lefnim miginasa shel chaveiroi. Right, let's say yarshim or shutfim, they divide up, and one guy has an inner gina and another one has an outer gina. One has it's a garden. Usually gardens are for vegetables, right? So not a sada, it's a garden. And you would have this person be inside, this person be the outside. So now, the guy in the inside only has the gina. He really doesn't have what? He doesn't have a derech even. However, nichnis bishosh derech b'nei adam nichnasim. He can go in the time where normal people go in. Says the Rashbam. Nichnis bishah, the kimishu oiselei has a gadol. Since he's making tremendous damage. Sha'oiva be'emsa sadeu. He's walking in the middle of the field to get to the gina. Hadavi yedua shleinisratzeloi berevach. In other words, he doesn't. We don't want to give him. We don't want to give him the right to go in anytime he wants. Elavat, he'll go in only when he needs. So if he wants to sell his produce, he can't sell it from inside by the field. He has to go ahead and take the produce outside and sell it outside. Again, we don't want the tagrim tramping through this guy's field. And let's say he wants to go ahead and use this as a shortcut, then he can't. The only way he can go in there is to get to his garden. He can't use the field as a shortcut to get to someplace else. Again, because the other guy is letting him go in, he can only go in, but he can't go in. That says Rashbam. If he doesn't need it, he shouldn't go in at all. That he's going in to go ahead and shorten his route. The domi lachnas is tagrin. It's similar to bringing in merchants. The only reason the outer guy gave him a way to go is for his gina. To harvest his crop. Something that's not necessary for the gina, and therefore he didn't give him a right to go to trespass. No shortcuts. Okay, and whatever derech there is, the chitzoinu can go ahead and he can go ahead and plant. Says Rashbam, the kivin the be'emsa sadeu, since it's in the middle of his field, and not sahadid loymachal derech. He's not being Michael Mikol. In other words, this guy has a field. I'm not going ahead and being mafker of derech I'm going to plant the derech. He'll go to his field, He'll step on some crops, he'll step on some of the crops. But I have a right to go ahead and plant this. And we'll see contrasting the next Mishnah. Noistin la derech min atzad. Now, if he gives him a derech from the side, Rashbam, ein nifsid kol kach. He doesn't lose so much. The kivin the midash shneim hu, since they both agree, anan sahadi the mistama moicheles kol derech legamri lios miyuchid alicha b'lei lizriya. In other words, if the owner of the outside field gave him on the side, then he's moichel that, and therefore he won't be able to plant, and he have a derech. He can go in at that time.
Going to conversation of these Nocha.
Yeah, no. This again. There was no mechira over here. If you notice, it was no mechira, right? It was Yerusha or Shutfin that divided up. That's why Rashbam is bothered by that, right? Right? He's bothered by that. Good hara. Continues the Mishnah. So if he gives him derech min atzad midash shnayim, then nichnas b'shashu reitza v'yotz b'shashu reitza. He can go anytime he wants. Umachna l'sechet hagarim. He can bring in merchants. But he still can't use it as a shortcut. And neither can go ahead and plant, right? Because he's Michael that derech, guys. Okay, so you have a contrast between the ratio of the Mishnah and the Seifa. In the ratio, where he's Bekoshi is letting him go through, he's very limited. All he can do is go to harvest his crop in and out. He can't bring people in. He has to go in at certain times, right? Masha Enkein, if he gives him a side entrance, then he's Michael to that. They both can plant, and therefore he can go anytime he wants, and therefore he can bring in Tagarim, because again, you're not worrying about trampling upon anything. It's not in the middle of his field, it's in the side. Very good. Rabbi Yehuda Mishmuel. Okay, now we're going to discuss different widths of different canals. Now, stam is we say an amma is the measurement of an amma, but we also use it as the term for a canal, an amma of water, right? Why they call it an amma? You always thought because it's an amma wide. It's not really true. It's because it's an amma deep. it's an amma deep. If you look at Tosfos, guys, Tosfos says, "Noisen l'shtei amas l'toicha." You have to give him 2 amas wide. So Tosfos in the bottom line says, "Mashi kruya amma mishum the oimka amma." The reason it's called an amma because its depth is an amma. It's an amma deep. So we're gonna go see a few. Again, we're not farmers, but we'll see what we got. I'm Rabbi Yehuda Mishmuel. Amma of water that's used based on shlachim, used to irrigate. Ain't ani meichelecha. I'm selling you. But he doesn't say how wide it's going to be. So noising la shtei amis. He gives him a canal that's 2 amis wide. L'seicha. The amma mikan v'amma mikan la'agapeha. And the banks 1 amma, 1 amis. It's a total wide of 4 amis. 2 on the banks and 2 on the width. And why is it called an amma? You know now because of Tosfos. If he says, "I'm selling you amma base hakilun," to go ahead and give use for your animals and to wash your begodim v'kelim, then ani meichelecha noisin la amma achas l'seicha, only 1 amma wide, v'chatzi amma mikan, a total of 2 ammas, half and 1. La'agapeha. For oisin agapayim, and this agapayim, these banks that he gives him, mi zoyram, who can go ahead what and plant over there? Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda says what in the name of Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel. Balasada zoyram. The balasada can plant over there. In other words, the one who owns the field, he has the rights to go ahead and use the banks. Rav Nachman Shmuel, balasada noitim. The balasada can't zoyrim plant, but he can put trees there. Now, there's a difference between planting and putting trees. It seems planting is worse. It weakens the ground worse. When trees, it seems the roots go down, but planting, they spread out. So the Mandi Amar Zoyrim, the one who says that you can plant seeds there, Kol Shekei Noitim is certainly you plant saplings there. Mandi Amar Noitim, but the one who says saplings, Abo Zoyrim Loi, but to go ahead and plant seeds, not. Of course, why? Right? Because Chalchule Mechalchule. They can go ahead and weaken the earth, and it's going to go ahead and cause the canal to go ahead and fall in. It's going to cause the canal to fall in. From Rabbi Yehuda Mashmuel, Amis Hamayim Shekalu, an Amis Hamayim that fell in, Agapeha Mitakna Boisasada. You can go ahead and use the chayil, the sand that's spread on the field that's next to it, because Biyadua shall loy kalu Agapeha Ela Boisasada. That the sand that fell in came from that field. Maskal Rapapa B'lei Malay. let the balasada say to the about the owner of the canal, Mayuch ashpule la'arach, your water took out my schmutz. In other words, that dirt that you could have used was taken away, and therefore you don't have a right to it. Papa, so he said, Papa says you're right. Shalmanas king kibula balasada. The reason why you can go ahead and use the reason you can go ahead, Rod, and use the banks is because when you bought that, you bought it on the condition that if anything goes ahead, Rod, if anything goes ahead and don't worry, you're on film. Don't if anyone goes ahead and it falls in, it's almanasta agapayim that you're going to go ahead, Rod, and make it up, and you're going to make up that difference. Okay, I think we'll stop over here.
Number one.
Yeah.